Okay, we're in the middle of the sugya of tzitzis. We're up to tonight's daf is Mem Gimel, and we're still holding on Mem Beis. On the Beis, we're discussing the of Tcheles. We're discussing Tcheles exactly. Uh, I think we're up to when you go ahead and you put it in a vat. Okay, I think that's where we're up to. We're discussing exactly Tcheles and how exactly that's going to work. So where are we up to? Amalei Abayil Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Parallel to the Tosfos, Ad Yavdan Lishman. Guys, parallel to the Tosfos, Ad Yavdan Lishman. So tonight we're not telling us exactly, where Tcheles came from. That'll be, I think, tomorrow's discussion. We may touch upon it at the end of the somewhere in the middle. I found a very interesting clip. But let's start from parallel to Achayavdan, one line below. Amalei Abayil Rav Shmuel by Rav Yehuda. Says Abayil to Rav Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Hai techilta this techeles hechi tzavisula. How would you go ahead and test? How would you test it? Hechi tzavisula. So Amalei, my sina dam chilazin. You go ahead and you bring the dam. How do you make it? You bring the dam of this creature called the chilazin. B'samanim. You bring some type of herb. V'ramina lehu b'yoyra, you put it in a vat, a boiling vat. Umar sachinan le. V'shakilna purta bibiasa. You take a small amount and you put it in an eggshell. You would take an eggshell. You take an eggshell and you take a small amount of what's cooking in the pot and you put it in this eggshell. V'tamina lehu be'udra, and you test it. What? You test it with this thread. So in other words, you're not trying to ascertain whether it is tcheles or not. But guys, we're checking out the quality of the tcheles, right? We want the quality of the color. So we're taking the dam of the chilazain, putting some herb in, and we're boiling it. Now we're taking, I guess it's called a swatch. Is a sample called a swatch, or I'm making that up, right? You take a swatch and you go ahead and take that thread and put it in this test of cheles, which is in an eggshell. It's in an eggshell, and you're taking it and you're putting it like there. And what do you do then? B'shadina leilahu biasa. You take whatever is left in that eggshell, guys, and you do not throw it back in the vat. You don't throw it back in the vat. You throw it away. And secondly, v'kalina leila udre, you go ahead and you burn the thread. So in other words, after we've ascertained that this tcheles is quality and it's good tcheles, we're getting rid of any remnant of the test. We're taking the egg that has the dye in it and throwing that away. We're not putting the dye in the back in the pot, nor are we using this thread that we checked with possibly for tzitzis, with burning it. We're getting rid of it. Says the Gemara, we can ascertain from these two actions, Shmamina tlas, we can hear three dinim. Shmamina te'ima psula, that the wool that you go ahead and use to test is puzzle. It's puzzle. Ushmamina debeinin tzviya lishma, and from here you hear that you need tzviya lishma. How do you hear that, fellas? Because you're throwing away, you're burning this what? You're burning the thread. Why did I dye this thread? I dyed it to test the quality of the blue. I was not going ahead and making it l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis. Memela, I'm throwing it away. So the Gemara is going to ask in a second, l'chayra, this is the same thing. Why are you throwing it away? It's because you need lishma. You're considering it two things. Really, it's one thing. The reason why I have to burn it, is because I can't use it. And I want to assure no one else uses it, and therefore I'm burning it. The Gemara is going to ask it and we'll answer. The third thing is that what? Ushmamina. What's the third thing? Shmamina.
He was looking for talking.
Now we have the third. Now we have the third that we can learn out from here. Shmamina te'ima pasla. That if you would use the dye, right? Again, if you throw it back in the pot, it would passel it. So guys, three things. One, right? One is that The test that you use is puzzle. Two, you need tzvi lishma, dyeing lishma, and three, the dye itself is puzzle. So the thread's puzzle, lishma. Okay, Fred Gemara, hainu te'ima psula, hainu tzvi lishma. Guys, it's the same thing. The reason why you have to burn the thread is because it's not lishma. Ravashi matam kama enachinami. Matam, you're giving a reason. Right. Matam te'ima psula. What's the reason the thread is puzzle? Mishum de be'inin tzvi lishma. That's because you need tzvi to be lishma. That's the reason it's puzzle. Since you need tzvi lishma, I'm going to say that it's puzzle. So it's not two separate reasons. It's one reason for both. Tima psul. Now, what's the reason it's puzzle? Kitanoi says the Gemara. Whether you need te'ima tzvi lishma is machlokes tanoim. Te'ima psula, it's possible to use the thread that wasn't made lishma. Mishum shenamar kolel tchelis. It says what? Kolel tchelis. That all it has to be used for tchelis. Rashi, since we learn, once you used it for something else, you diluted it. It's not kolel tchelis. You need everything for the tchelis. In this sense, it's used for something else. It's not. It's in other words, guys. I'm taking something that was used and throwing it back. It's not kol. That's not kolol, not kula tcheles. One was used for something else. So therefore, obviously, you don't need you need lishma. The Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Havoy Omer afilu marasheni sheba kosher. You could use it. You could marasheni. You could use it. Mishum shenemar ushni toilas. Usually, shni toilas means right red thread. Here it means, and the second one could be used. Play on words. The second one that could be used. Nimsa fellas, you have three levels of lishma by the tzitzis. You have three levels of lishma by the tzitzis, right? Shmuel said that the tfiyah of the tzitz has to be lishma, meaning when you're making the actual thread, you're twisting the wool together, it has to be lishma. According to Rav, not. According to Shmuel, yes. Secondly, you have a din of lishma that when you place it on the beged, the asiya, when you place it on the beged, it has to be lishma, right? When you put it and you start making it knots, it has to be lishma. And thirdly, a din in the dye lishma. So there's three lishmas by tzitzis: the tfiyah, the actual making of it, and the dyeing of it. Right? It has to be lishma. Again, a little severity of why the shma by tzitzis is such a chashuva thing. Tanrabana, tcheles ein la bedika. Tcheles doesn't have a bedika. Let's see Rashi. Ein la bedika, a little bit up above. Kasal kedaitach. Ein adam yachal lebaitka in tcheles hu im kala ilan hu. You won't be able to tell the difference between whether it's tcheles or whether it's kala ilan. As we saw, kala ilan is from a plant. It's from a plant, whereas tcheles is from some type of creature. It's the secretion or the blood of a creature. So the Gemara's Havamina is you can't tell the difference between the two. That's the Gemara's Havamina. We're going to get off it, but right now, that's the Havamina. There's no way to discern between Kala Ilan, the plant-based blue, and the Hastis. It must look exactly alike. Guys, when the Gemara has such a Havamina, you can't go ahead and tell the difference. It must be when it comes to looking at it, it looks exactly the same. That's why you need a mumcha. That's why you need a hechsha. It looks exactly the same. Okay. So tcheles ein lehem bedika ve'ein nikachin ela min hamumcha. Memela nikachas you can't buy it from a muncha because you want to make sure it's not kol ilan. You want to make sure it's not kol ilan. Since in the havamina you can't tell the difference, right? You have to buy it from an expert. Tefillin yesh lehem bedika. You could tell guys by the tefillin about the parshiyos. You could tell whether they have chaseros or malayos. You could look and see the way it's written. You could say if it's written kil chasa. Because as we saw, you need ibn lishma. You need that the tanning process be lishma. So you need a mumcha to tell you that the bottom were made lishma, as opposed to just put together, right? So vis-a-vis the parshiyos, you don't need a mumcha. But excuse me, you could be boidik yourself or with somebody, but you need a mumcha for the shame that the leather, the bottom are made lishma. Svarim umezuzos sefer Torah mezuzos yesh lehem bedika. You can again check them for if they're missing letters, not missing letters, chseros, missing a vav or not. V'nikachim mikol adam, and you can buy it from anybody. So nimtza guys, according to Rashi at least, Rashi says you don't need someone to testify that a mezuzah you don't need ibul lishma. Mashma sefer Torah you don't need ibul lishma either. Guys, you're being mechalik in a sefer Torah and tefillin. Tefillin you need a mumcha to make sure that the tanning process was the shema. Mashma according to Rashi, you don't need for a sefer Torah. You don't need someone who's a mumcha. You don't need someone who's a mumcha. So Taisus disagrees. Taisus seems to say that of course you can figure that out when it says that a mumcha. Why you need a mumcha by tefillin? It's because for tefillin you're gonna have to trouble yourself to go ahead and it's not of course the parchment has to be lishma, but checking the sefer Torah is much easier than checking tefillin. Tefillin you're gonna have to trouble yourself to open up, get it open and everything. So it's a big deal. Mashen can a sefer Torah is not such a big deal. So Rashi is learning when Rashi says that a sefer Torah does not need, you don't need a mumcha by a sefer Torah because it's easy to be checked. Mashen came tefillin, which is a pain to check. Therefore, you need a mumcha. Because if not, you're not going to bother checking because it's so hard to get. You pry it open, get the glue, whatever what's going on. Spheres, it's not easy. Okay, that's so machlokes Rashi and Taisus whether you need ibur the shema by a sefer Torah. Yes, Harold.
So, in the case of tchelas, if it wasn't, if it wasn't made properly, you still yaitza because it's wool, right? I'm saying there wouldn't be an issue. You think you're having tchelas, you have tzitzis that have tchelas.
What happens if you have a linen beged, and it's called a Elon Heshi?
So
you know what that's called?
Yeah, it's possible.
No, it's not puzzle. It's called shatnez. It's called shatnez.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what you're talking about. Okay, yeah, that would be shatnez. But I'm just talking about today. The guy buying tzitzis that have looks nice, looks blue, but the guy dyed it blue from some chemical. I don't know.
I want to ask you a question, but again, there are people. Again, you're getting into the discussion whether today's tchelis is tchelis or not. That's a shmooze, right? That's a shmooze. But in terms of kala ilan versus kala ilan, and you in other words, if you're wearing a woolen beged and you're wearing tchelis with a dyed blue, you're right. It's not a problem. And it's not a problem. It's just right. You're not yoytz in the midst of tchelis, but you won't be over in the isser either.
Right, but Mashen came as you're discussing now. Mezuzah, sefer Torah, those things are like it's possible. Period.
Yeah, but again, I gave you an example.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the Havamina. It's only the Havamina that ain't like bedika. You can't check the difference between kol ilan and real tcheles. Says the Gemara.
How do we know if it's double dipped or not? Also, then quote the sheet that says you can't dip it again. Looking at the blue,
that's why you need a mumcha. That a mumcha wouldn't do that. You're right. You're right, Yankel. You need a mumcha that it was done right. Again, your mumcha is going to tell you whether it's made lishma. Your mumcha is going to tell you whether it's made lishma or not. In other words, that's the Gemara's teretz. Yankel is mechavan to the Gemara's teretz. In the Havamina, it is whether you could tell the difference between the two. In the teretz is going to be you need a mumcha to tell me that it wasn't used the second time. Very good. Okay. But let's see the Gemara. Let's see how it fares. It's very good, Yankel. Says the Gemara. You're telling me that what? You're telling me the ein la bedika, the tcheles ein la bedika. Again, guys, the Havamina that you can't discern the difference between tcheles and kol ilan. For Rabbi Yitzchak berei de Rabbi Yehuda badiklei. How did he check? He checked out whether it was kol ilan or not. Maisi megavya gila. He would bring what's called alum. Rashi calls this alum. Umaya de shavalisa, and water of Rashi calls fenugreek, right? Fenugreek, we use that in Rosh Hashanah, fenugreek. Umeimei raglayim amid aleph ben aboyim yoim, and urine of 40 days. Rashi says two pshatim, either urine of a child who's 40 days old, or urine from a human being that's been out of his body for 40 days. V'torile b'gavayu, and you soak the thread with the blue dye in it, me'urta v'ad safra, from evening till morning. Ifrid, if it goes ahead and separates chazusa, if it's kala separates, then psula, then you know it's kala ilon. Loy ifrid chazuse, and if it doesn't separate, then kshera. So what are you telling me that what? That there's no way to be bodik, the difference between kala ilon and tcheles? You see, obviously there is a way to go ahead and set the difference. For Rav Ada and Rav Ada Kamei de Rava Mishmei de Rav Avira Amar, I have a different bedika. Maisi Chamira Arkasa Desari, bring me bread. It's hard barley bread. Va'afale bigave, bake the bake the thread in the bread, right? Bake it, right? Ishtane lemalusa. If the color changes, it gets to myelin. I guess maybe it gets bluer. Kshera ligriusa psula. And if it got worse, then it's pasul. So if it gets better, it's color it's tcheles, and if it doesn't, then it's color ilon. B'simanecha, to remember what's what is shinoi sheker, shinoi emes. Says Rashi, 3 lines down. Simanecha, eze shinoi kasha, eze shinoi pasul. Which one? Again, I got 2 shinoyim. It's either getting better or worse. How do you remember which one's kasha and which one's not? Shinoi sheker is hamashana diburi l'ra. Hakol yoidim sherahu. If a guy changes his words to the detriment, you know he's lying. Shini emes hamashana diburi l'haisav alav. Then it's better. So if he changes his words for the betterment, then what? So therefore that's MS, and therefore that's the way to remember it. Shino MS. That's similar to what if the color changes in a better way. Says so. L'chayra, we have a kasha, question mark after all this. What's the question mark? Again, in the Havamina, you can't tell the difference between the two. You can't check. You see, there's 2 ways of checking. You can either check with fenugreek alum 40-day urine, or you could check with sourdough barley. You can go ahead and check 1 or 2 ways. And for the Gemara, my einla bedika, nami dekamar atiima, like Yankel said, you can't go ahead and check whether it was used before or not. To check between kala ilon and to check with the cheles einachinami, you do have tests to check whether it was used as a test to see if it was really a good dye, or to test if it was made l'shma, l'shem, mitzvah, tzitzis. That you can't. Yankel, very good. You see that you can't. That you can't. So the atiima. So therefore, that's the change to the Kesalkat. I thought that's how we're changing now. Mar mimashre, that's the name of a person. Achle techilta b'shonei Rav Acha. He went ahead and he bought techeles in the years of Rav Achoy. But Kua b'Rab Yitzchak Berei Rav Yehuda, he checked it out using the method of Yitzchak Berei Rav Yehuda. That was the alum fenugreek urine method. The ifrid chazusa, and the appearance changed. So l'chayre it's kala ilin. B'Rab Rav Ada, then he went ahead and checked using the barley bread method. V'ishtanoi l'mal yusa, and it changed to the better. Says the Gemara, Sava lemifsulei. So Rav Memashche, this name of person, said it's possible. After all, look, it switched, it changed, right? So Amalu Rav Achoy, Elahol loy chiltehi, right? V'loy kol ala ilinhi. In other words, you have test or a tati the sasre. If you go after the alum fenugreek urine test, it's kol ilin. If you go after the barley bread test, it's what? It's tcheles. So why are you pasling? Guys, in other words, you decided to pasl because of test number 1. Like test number 2, it was tcheles because it got better. So Ella Shmamina Shmausa Adadi Yitmar. They are not distinctly different. They coexist, meaning they're not mutually exclusive. They're made to be done together. Guys, outside, if you do fenugreek urine alum, you do that test and it doesn't separate, no need for a second test. If, however, it separates, then you put the second test of barley bread. So in other words, they're not mutually exclusive. They're shmeitzel adadi. They learn together. If you check using Reb Yitzchak's way, that's the alum way, lo yifrid, if it doesn't separate chazusa kshera, you don't have to test anymore. If it chazuse, but if it does go ahead and separate, But Keenan lay, then you do the second test. In other words, the first test is not a fate to complete it. It's called Elon. If it separates, there's still a second problem. There's a second test. What's that? B'derav Akov, Rabbi Chamira Akasa, Ishtin Mayusik Sheira, Legrayusik Psula. Use the barley bread method, and if it goes ahead, gets better, then it's tcheles, and if it doesn't want, then it's what? Kol Elon. Sholchem Itom, they sent from there. Shmuasa Adadi Yitma. They're set together. Now, this little segment over here is I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I found this fascinating. I have written on the side of my Gemara over here that this is the last mentioning that we have in all of Talmudic literature of the Chilazim. This is the last one, and it's in the art scroll. It's an appendix in the art scroll. So here it is. You can see English writing. Do you see English writing, guys? Or Hebrew? What do you see?
Yes, English.
You think? Okay, thank you. So the identity, I'm just going to read to you. The identity of the Chilazin and the use of its byproducts, the Tchelis dye, were lost to the Jewish people approximately 13 centuries ago. The latest reference to the possession of the Tchelis is on Mem Gimel Amid Aleph, where the Gemara describes that a sample of the Tchelis was brought and tested chemically in the times of Rabbi Choy. The implication being that the Tchelis was already uncommon by those times. This Rabbi Choy was one of the heads of Rabbanon Savaroi. They lived after the Amoraim. This was after Rav Ashi, who were the final editors of the Talmud Bavli. He's quoted throughout the Talmud in an explanatory context. Rabbi Choy passed away in the year 510 Common Era. Okay? So basically, this plays an important role in ascertaining how long ago it's been since we don't have tcheles, guys. You're talking 2000. You're talking 1800 years ago, right? Or the 1700 years ago, something like that. It's almost 2 millennium that we haven't had it. And you read it if you have the art scroll. Read the appendix there. If not, I'll put it out on the chat. The rest of this, how over time so this Gemara is telling us a chiddush. It's telling us a chiddush that it showed up that this person came Mamashit to check Rachoy. This is like the last sampling of Tcheles. Because if it was far spread, then it wouldn't have been such a chiddush over here. It wouldn't have been such a chiddush over here. That this is like one of the rare last chances, and this is the last thing is because Rabbi Choy came. It was again Rabbi Choy going. This is really the Rabbanan Savaroi, really. Rabbanan Savaroi. This is after Ravina Rav Ashi, fellas. This is mamish. Okay, just I find that a fascinating fact that I'm sure we'll hear about in a blog at some point in time. Okay. Anyway, Tan Rabbanan. Excuse me. Rav Moni Dayik v'zavni kichumri masnisan. He was medayik, and he went ahead, and like the chumrah that he would go ahead and only buy from a mumcha. He would only buy from a mumcha. In other words, if you guys showed up with a blue thread, he was machmir to if the guy wasn't a mumcha, he was chayish that perhaps it was that it was used for a test, and therefore he didn't use it. Amalei Saba said to Saba, again, I once always told you that this is the third time I'm telling it to you. Third time. Chulin Navav. Anytime it says Ahu Saba, it's Eliyahu Navi. It says Ella Amalei Hisaba Hachi Ovid Kamoi de Kamoch ve'etzlach Iskayu. Those who came before you, they were machmir in this as well, and the halacha, and they were very matzliach in their business. So that you're machmir in tcheles, as a result, they were very matzliach. Tan Rabbanan. Halakech talis mitzuyat sois min ashuk. If you buy a talis that has tzitzis in it already, mi Yisrael, if you buy it from Yisrael and it has tcheles in it, harihu b'cheskasa, it's a chazaka that it's kosher v'yasha. Minov de chachavim, if you buy it from a goy, mina tagar kshera, from the tagar it's kosher. Mina hedyet pesula. But if you buy it from a hedyet, it's puzzle. It's not a kasha, fellas. Didn't you say you have to go buy from a mumcha? Now you're telling me you're buying from a goy? Guys, how can it be? You're buying it from you have a guy opens up a Svarim store and he's selling tzitzis and you buy tzitzis from him. It's kosher. But yet it said you have to from a mumcha. So it's pashut pshat, guys. Here you're buying tzitzis. You're not buying tchelis. You're not checking whether it was lishma or not. You're buying the tzitzis. The assumption is that this guy must have bought the tzitzis from somebody who's falestach. He's not making dye and everything, but the dye itself, which is hard to tell, that you're talking need a mumcha. That you're talking need a mumcha for the dye. Says that would be the chilik between what, but the need for a mumcha. Need for a mumcha is the dye itself, and the din of what of the buying tzitzis. If you buy from a tiger, he's not going to go away. His reputation's at stake, so he's not going to go ahead and be involved in some hanky panky. Min a hedyet from a regular guy psula. Even though, how did this guy get a hold of it? This tiger, you bought it from a yid. Even though you're not supposed to sell it, until you take off the tzitzis. Again, in those days they wore the tzitzis was part of their clothing, fellas. It wasn't like a separate garment. It was part of it's ksus. Guys, we speak about a ksus yoim, ksus laila. They slept in a beged that had tzitzis on it, or if you held that yichayv and tzitzis at night, and ksus yoim, that was like their tunic. It was so. In other words, if you're going to sell a shirt, you're going to sell a type of robe to a guy that's four-cornered, you would take the tzitzis off. Why would you do that? My timer, hacha tirgmu here in Bavel, they are metagen mishum zoina. Rashi brings two pshatim. The first pshat I'm not going to tell you. You'll get it for yourself. The second pshat is that what? Yechayish, that you know what's going to happen? That a guy will be with a zoina, and he'll have these tzitzis, and he'll say that, where I got these tzitzis from, and she'll go ahead and be mavaza what? She'll be mavaza yid. In other words, she'll go ahead and say the yid was with her. So therefore, to avoid that, you're never going to go ahead and give a regular guy a pair of tzitzis that could lead to a bezoyin for another yid. And therefore, so Fred the Gemara Kasha, so how's it possible that a guy tiger would have in hands? So Rabbi Yehuda Amar, a separate reason, Shem Yislava imoy b'derech v'yargena. That if a guy has tzitzis, if you sell a beggar to a guy of tzitzis, right? If you sell a beggar to a guy of tzitzis, maybe he'll make believe he's a Jew, and you'll go on a trip with him, and he'll kill you. Chayish the goyim. We spoke about in the Avodah Zarah. The goyim are chayish for killing. So therefore, to avoid two cardinals, to avoid shvichas damim and znos, to avoid such a thing, you shouldn't go ahead and sell it to a guy. I guess to a tagar, they must have held that what you could sell it to. Okay. Anyway, because again, he's a businessman. Rav Yehuda Rami Techilta lePrazuma de Inshe Besa. He would go ahead and put tcheles, he put tzitzis on the garment of Inshe Besa, meaning his wife. And in addition, he'd make a bracha called safra every morning, le'sateif bat tzitzis. Good? So he did two things. This is the Amoyer Rav Yehuda. He did two things. One, he gave his wife tzitzis. One, he went ahead and he gave his wife tzitzis. And Sveitens, he went ahead and he would make a bracha, and he would make a bracha on every morning on his sateif bat tzitzis. Guys, outside. Guys, if his wife is wearing tzitzis, what must he hold? That tzitzis is a mitzvah asaseh shaloyas mangrama, right? It's not dependent upon time, right? Therefore, it must be that tzitzis yichayv at night. The whole reason a woman would be potter from tzitzis is because it's a mitzvah asaseh shas mangrama. It's dependent on time. So if during the day is the time and night is not the time, that would explain why you potter. Once he's putting tzitzis on of his wife's beged, he must hold that tzitzis is what? Is not a mitzvah seshes bangrama. Good? If that's the case, then why is he making a bracha in the morning? L'chayra, he's wearing tzitzis all the time. You make a bracha, right? You take off your, right? You put on a tzitzis, you make a bracha. But if he's wearing tzitzis all the time, why is he making a bracha? So it would appear that these two clauses are tati the sasre, they're slaves to themselves. That's what the Gemara addresses right now. The Tanya, Tefillin kol zman she'menichim mevarach aleihem. The whole did I skip? Yes. Midarami, when he put it on his wife's beged, ksavar mitzvah sesei shlayas mangramahu. It's a mitzvah sesei shlayas mangrama. Amai mevarich kol safra v'tzafra. Then why would he make a bracha each and every morning? And for the Gemara Karebi, the Tanya, Tefillin kol zman shemenichim mevarich aleihem. The very Rebbe, no, they used to wear tefillin the whole day, but they would take it off when they put it back on. So l'chayra, same thing over here. He would take it off and put it back on, and therefore he made a bracha. Even though what it's a mitzvah shelo zman grama. Ihachi kol shaita nani. If that's the case, why did he only make a bracha in the morning? He should make a bracha every time. If you're telling me, Rabbi, guys, when we take your tefillin off, you went to the bathroom, you put it back on. I assume you went to the bathroom more than once a day. So you went to the bathroom more than once a day, you're making a bracha on your tefillin each and every time. If you're telling me that tzitzis is synonymous with tefillin, then you should make a bracha of l'satef once a day. You should make it every time you take it off. Like tefillin makes it every time. You should make that bracha of tzitzis every time. Yet you're only making it once in the morning. As I read the Gemara. So says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda inshet tzniah ave. He never took it off his garment. He was a man tznuah. He wore his garment the whole day. So therefore, if he wore his garment the whole day, why did he make a bracha in the morning? Umayshna made safra. Ki mishani miksus lailo ksus yain. You know, maybe he wore a different garment at night. But it could be whatever, pajamas or some other clothing he wore at night. Something during the day. And memela what he would go ahead and. So I asked the kasha guys, if he made a bracha from morning to night, why do you make a morning from day to night? You're making a morning from your nighttime to the morning, you're making the satef. So when he would take off, like Rabbi, when he took off his daytime clothing and he put on his nighttime clothing, why doesn't he make a bracha?
Has the chadas?
What?
Has the chadas? He was asleep.
No, Rabbi, he's making it, it's no hesradas. He's making a bracha because he's changing garments. So when he changes from his nighttime garment to his daytime garment, he's making a bracha. I'm asking you, therefore, when he goes from his daytime clothing to his nighttime clothing, he should make a bracha on the nighttime clothing.
Okay. If it was done at night, if it was done during the day, because you don't make a bracha at night.
Why not? Why shouldn't you make a bracha at night?
On tzitzis, because it's not a mitzvah. Tzitzis, you don't make a bracha at night.
That's because we hold it's a mitzvah says shloyas mat grama. He holds the mitzvah says shloyas. We hold the mitzvah says man grama. He holds the mitzvah shloyas man grama, right? So if he's making a bracha, right? So he's making a bracha. So I think the Rush learns that he was at snua, that the clothing that he wore during the day he didn't take it off. He just put it on a nighttime garment. So therefore, since he didn't take off the daytime clothing, right? Mashen came when he took off the nighttime clothing, then he made the bracha. I think that's what the Rush says. I have to look it up. I didn't look it up, but that seems to be the chiluk between the two. Says the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan. Hakol chayav mitzitzis, kahanim leviim yisraelim, gerim, nashim va'avadim. Tanakama holds that women are mechuyev mitzitzis. Reb Shimon Paiter, right? Reb Shimon, he says yipata minashim because mefnei shemitzvah shesman gramahu. Chamitzvah shesman gramahu nashim peturais. So machloikis between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon. Amamar, going back over the Brisa. Hakol chayom mitzitzis kahanim levim Yisraelim pshita di kahanim levim Yisraelim patiri man lechayev. Guys, what do you tell me? if the only one who's going to be chayev in mitzvahs is a Jew, among Jews there's only three types. There's a kohen, there's Levi, and Yisrael. So you're telling me the chayavim? Of course the chayavim. Who else could be chayev? It's a davar pashut. Says the Gemara, the chiddush kahanim it's trichle. The chiddush is kahanim. Salkadai chamina hoyel ksiv leisilbish shatnis tsemru pishtim yachdov gedilim tasalach man deloy ishteri kalayim legabei belevisha hu de mechayv tzitzis hani kahanim the hoyel the ishteri kalayim legavayu loy lechayvoi kemash malon. I might think that, guys, this what this okay. Kamash Malon, Nehi the Ishtri be'eda and Avoida, good. It's mutter at the time they're wearing the big day kahuna. It's mutter b'shas Avoida, but loy eden Avoida loy Ishtri. But not in the time of Avoida. Is it permitted? Perish, guys. The avnate of the kohen was shatness. The avnate, the belt that the kohen wore was shatness. So the chiddush over here is the following: who is chayiv in tzitzis? Someone who is over on the Israel Yisrael shatness. The kohen who gets a waiver for that, right? I would think he's not chayiv in tzitzis. Kemash Malon, since he only gets the waiver by wearing a b'shas avoda, Since Shaloi b'shas avoida he is chayiv in shatnis, then therefore he's chayiv in tzitzis. But the chiddush is that don't think that the kohen who gets a waiver because of shatnis, right? He's not over. He wears shat. Again, if you're doing the avodah, you're wearing shatnis every day b'shas avodah. So you think he's not chayiv in tzitzis? Kamash malon that since it's only that time he has the waiver, but any other time he's chayiv in shatnis. Who I didn't want, he be what chayiv in tzitzis. That's the chiddush. The words of the kahanim. Reb Shimon poita b'noshem my timer. Why does he hold it's a mitzvah zeh? There's obviously a huge machlokes over here. Whether it's mitzvah zeh mangra, not mitzvah zeh mangra. The Reb Shimon the Tanya uriisa my soy pradik suslaila. But you should see it. Pradik suslaila at nighttime. You don't put it on your nighttime garment. Why don't you put it on your nighttime garment, guys? Because it's pata. Risa Maisai, it's pata. This is his source. Risa Maisai. Maybe a sumu can't see it, right? Maybe it's speaking about a blind person that can't see his garment. That's pater. Those extra words. We include the words ashet chaseba. They include that a suma is chayiv tzitzis. Hamani, hamami nakayim risa Maisai. Okay, so in other words, I have a miyut and I have a riboy. I have risem oisai, that's a miyut. I have ashet chasaboy is a riboy. By ashet chasaboy, I'm being marbe the ksus of a suma. And risem oisai, I'm being memayir ksus laila. And the yotzim midvarmenu, p'tur of ksus laila is it's pata mitzvah shman grama. Yes, Nasser.
People wear tzitzis at night. Is there any makar for it? It doesn't seem like that over here.
There's no chiyuv to wear tzitzis at night. People wear tzitzis at night. It's a shmira for bad dreams or other things. That it's a shmira, but not that there's a din of chiyuv to wear tzitzis. It's a shmira. Now, umar royas l'rabbeis ksus suma ulahoitzi ksus laila. In other words, I got a riba, I got a miyat. I opted to go in the way of including a suma and excluding a ksus laila. Why do I include the ksus laila and exclude a suma? When it comes to ksus laila, we're all in the same ballpark. You can't see it. When it comes to ksus of a suma, he can't see it, but others could see it. So it has more shaykhis to re'isim. Okay. For Rabbanon, now the Rabbanon who's hold it's a mitzvah zeh shehaz mangrama, shaloi has mangrama, and a woman's chayiv. Why do they do hayashet chasaba my avdilei? What is that? What's the kasha? Look at the top Rashi. Why do I need ashet chasaba l'rabbis ksusuma layitzterich the hashto umaksus laila that mechayva the mechayva tzitzis kol kshen ksusuma the yeshna beria el lacherim. Guys, what's more of a svara to say is chayv and tzitzis? Ksus laila or ksusuma? And the answer is ksusuma because more people can see it. So if the chachamim they hold that what that they hold that even ksus laila is chayiv, then certainly ksusuma is chayiv. So they don't need asher techasaboy for ksusuma. They don't need the riboy. Automatically, guys, if they don't have the miyat of a soy, they don't need the riboy of asher techasa. Again, what's riboy? What is the reason I say teaching me? It's teaching me that a ksus laila doesn't need tzitzis. Says the chachamim, ksus laila does need tzitzis. If you're telling me ksus laila that no one can see needs tzitzis, certainly the ksus suma that everyone besides the suma could see certainly needs tzitzis. So what do they do with the ribu ashet chasaba that Rabbi Shimon used to include the ksus suma? They don't need ashet chasaba for that. So what do they use it for? They use it for the following: Al arba kanfois ksuscha, arba v'lei shalosh. Only a beggar of 3 or 4 and not 3. Maybe arba v'lei shalosh and ela arba v'lei chamesh, maybe 4 not 5. Kishoima ashet chasaba hari balas chamesh amar. Umani mekayim al arba v'lei shalosh. Umar rois l'rabes balas chamesh l'hoitzi balas shalosh. Marbani balas chamesh that's chayv and tzitzis. That not that you have to put all again. It has 5 corners, but you only have to put 4 tzitzis. The only one who holds you'd have to put on 5 would be Rav Shimon. If you might remember that Rabbi Shmuel hold each one is a mitzvah by itself. Balas chamesh yesh b'chal chamesh arba because 4 is yesh b'chal masayim mana, 4 is b'chal 5. Umoitzini balas shalosh shein b'chal shalosh arba. Rav Shimon, where does Rav Shimon know this from? Since he uses Asher Techasabai to include the ksus of a summa, where does he know that a five-cornered beged would be chayiv in tzitzis? Is Rav Shimon me Asher nafka? It says Asher Techasabai. He learns it from the Asher. For Rabbanan Asher loy mashmalu. In this instance, Asher does not mashmalu. For Rabbanan, now getting down to brass tacks, if they learn that Yechayiv in it's a mitzvah essay shaloyas mangrama, what did they do with the miyat of Rav Shimon of Reisam Isai? Uri Isam Isai my avdile. What did they do with Rav Shimon's miyat of Reisam Isai? Mibayil l'chedetanya. Uri Isam Isai usachartem ra mitzvah zu. You see the mitzvah of tzitzis. V'zachva mitzvah acheres, and you'll remember another mitzvah hatli yispai that depends upon it. They zu kriya shema, right? You'll remember kriya shema. What's the connection, fellas, between kriya shema and what and tzitzis? You're going to tell me it's the third parsha, right? No, it says that not. Which the time, right? Mashiach ben tchelis lelavan, right? The zman of Mashiach, were you able to tell the difference between blue and green? So that's the connection between that and tzitzis. So you'll go ahead and you'll look at your tzitzis, you'll remember kriya shema. B'tanya Yidach, another brisa, Urisem Isai, Usachartem, Ra mitzvah zu, you'll see the mitzvah tzitzis, V'zacha mitzvah acheres, and you'll remember another mitzvah, Hasmuchalov, Ve'zeh, so mitzvahs kalayim, you'll remember the mitzvah of shatnis, T'chsev, Leisil b'shatnis, Tzem pishtim yachdav, Gedim tasalach. Go, right? So you remember, so two pshatim so far, Urisem Isai, according to the Chachamim, one, you'll remember Kriya Shema, two, you'll remember shatnis. A third, Tanya Yidach, Risam Isai Usachatem as called mitzvahs Hashem. Kimishin Eschai Adam mitzvah zu. Since a person is chayv in this mitzvah, the Eschai b'chol mitzvahs kulan. You chayv in every other mitzvah, right? Risam as called mitzvah Hashem. Rather we say that every mitzvah. We went, guys. Remember we saw the Rashi, the Taisvis. Why Taisvis says you make 5 knots, right? 5, not 7, not 13. You might remember this. Why 5? So you have 5 knots, 8 strings is 13, and Ran and Tzitzis is 600. So that's how you remember all the mitzvahs. Rav Shimon, he, Dama mitzvahs esesh as mangromihi. And this would only be according to Rav Shimon that it's mitzvahs esesh as mangroma. Guys, why? Because women are not mechayim all mitzvahs. Women are not mechayim all mitzvahs. Tanya Idach Urisem Isai Usachatim es Kol Mitzvahs Hashem Shekula Mitzvah Zu Keneged Kol Mitzvahs Kula. The mitzvah of tzitzis is equal to all the mitzvahs. I think there's a very famous ma'aser with the Gra. I was on his deathbed and he was playing with his tzitzis, and he says, "Look for a few kopek." That was the denomination of Vilna. Look at a few kopek. You can go ahead and make the mitzvahs, and now he's going to die and he won't be able to do it. It's inexpensive. I guess Gra certainly did not have tchelis, right? Was inexpensive, and therefore he was bemoaning the fact that he would be losing this mitzvah. The Tanya Idach Risem Isai Usachartem Vasisem. So you have Reisem Sachartem Vasisem Re'iyah, seeing Meviyah de Schira brings you to remembering. Schira Meviyah de Asiya, and remembering brings you to what? Performance. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Kol HaZaros b'mitzvah zu, any zar in the mitzvah tzitzis. You'll be Zeichel Mekabel Pnei. I find these Gemaras very, very comforting, fellas. You know, you have all the Gemaras that you do this thing. Right here, you wear tzitzis. You take for granted you're wearing tzitzis. So you do it. Look. Give a cook what tzitzis can do. Look what it's. Mama shakal, like all the mitzvahs. You keep all the mitzvahs. You look at it. You remember once Risem Isai when you say Shmones, when you say Kriya Shema every day. Recently, you take a look at it and you have in mind the 613 mitzvahs. It's a gaval de gazach. Kol hazaris b'mitzvah zu zeichem kav pnei shchina. Ksiv hacho risem isai, ksiv hasam es Hashem lekecha tira v'isai tavaid. So risem isai tavaid. You'll serve Hashem. Risem isai. Tan Rabbanan. Havim Yisrael she svivasan Hakadosh Baruch Hu mitzvahs. Bnei Yisrael are so dear. Hakadosh Baruch Hu surrounded them with mitzvahs. Right? Tefillin b'rasheihem, utefillin b'zroyaseihem. You have tefillin on your head. You have tefillin on your arm. B'tzitzis b'vigdeihem. Tzitzis on their garments. Umezuzah lepischeihem, and the mezuzah for the Pesach of the house. Valei Mama David, what does David say? Sheva beyoim hilal ticha al mishpatei tzidkecha. So Sheva, guys, you have 7. Let's do the math. You have 2 mitzvahs at tefillin, right? You have 4 tzitzis is 6. You have mezuzah is 7. So Sheva b'yom ticha, a play on words. You have 7 mitzvahs that praise you. B'shash nichlas David lebeis hamerchatz, famous Gemara. David went to beis hamerchatz. V'ra atzmai oimid arum. He saw himself standing without clothing. Ama oili she'emoid arum. Wo that I'm arum b'lei mitzvahs. B'kivin she'niska b'mila she'v'sarai nishash v'daitoi. And since he remembered his mila that he had yishuv das. Okay. La'achar sheyotza amar leha shira shnemar lamatzeach ala shminis. Mizma LeDavid, right? What's a shminis, guys? Al mila shenitna b'shmini. Mila that was given out on the 8th day. So I heard Sruli Bornstein born in Rabbi Itzalmi Petterberger said a Gavaldig Gazach. David was remembering what the mitzvah of Mila, and it gave Yishuv Das. When was David Gemalit? When he was 8 days old. What's he remembering? Remember the Mila 8 days ago? Hey, there's a 2 mitzvahs in Mila, guys. There's a mitzvah to be gemalit, and there's a mitzvah to be in the state of Mila. That every time you're in a state of Mila, again, this is a very, very comforting feeling, that the fact that you're gemalit is considered a mitzvah. The fact that you went to Mila. There's Gemara that says that Avram Avinu stands by the opening of Gehenna, and he sees the one who's Yotza, bris Mila, and he saves him from the Eish of Gehenna. Because again, these mitzvahs that we take for granted, we should go ahead and focus on Gemaras like this to give us, in the times of despair when you think you're not doing good, these are reasons, the Gavaldic reasons. You get tzitzis, you do Mila, these are Gavaldic things to do. One more Gemara. Rabbi Lezer Yaakov Omer, Kol sheyesh like tefillin b'roishai, utefillin b'zroyai, v'tzitzis b'bigdai, u'mezuzah b'pitchai. Someone who has tefillin on top of his head, and on his arm, and tzitzis on his beged, and mezuzah on his door. Hakol bechizuk shloyechta. This is the mechazek that you won't do averis. Shnemar v'achut hamishaleshesh loy b'meheri yinatek. The chut mishaleshes, the 3 mitzvahs, tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzis, they won't go ahead and be broken completely. V'yomer choyna malach Hashem saviv l'reyav, that the malach surrounds them, and he saves them. Okay, so very nice. There's a nice Rambam, guys. A nice Rambam. Do you see a Rambam over here?
Yes.
Hilchas Mezuzah. Okay, Hilchas Mezuzah, Perik Vav, Halacha Yud Gimel. Listen, guys, listen to a Rambam. I think I picked up the wrong one. This is not the one I want. Hang on a second. No, this is the Rambam, but I want to do another one. No, okay, I'm stuck. Anyway, Hakol Chayiv Adam Lizar b'Mezuzah mifnei she chayiva Hakol Tamid. A person should be careful in the midst of mezuzah. It's a chiyuv all the time. V'chol zman sheyichnes v'yetzei. Person goes into his house, leaves his house. Yifka beyichud Hashem shemoi shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He'll meet the yichud of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the parsha of Shema that exists in this. Again, this is in Perek Vav Halacha Yud Gimel. V'yiska avasai, and he'll remember his love. V'yir mishnasai, he'll wake up from his sleep. U'shigayosav, and his mistakes behevlei azman. Now, as you look at the mezuzah, you think for a second what's there. Yichud Hashem, there's a Rabbeinu Shalom, there's a Rabbeinu Shalom who loves me, there's a Rabbeinu Shalom who's watching out for me, and he'll wake you up. The only thing that counts is the knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It'll put a person back on the right path. Most of us, the reason we stray is we live in this kind of world of day-by-day existence without thinking of Hashem. So every once in a while we have these moments of Osiris, we think of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that leads us to go ahead and to serve Him better. That's the person of mezuzah, guys, to remind us every day there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu who is the only thing. He's the Tzurei Lomim. He's the Rock of Ages. He's the Yichud Hashem, Hashem Echad. And if it arouses us and that we place and not take for granted or think for a second, it causes tremendous desirous. Amru Chachamim Harishainim Kol Mi Sheyesh Lei Tefillin B'Roishai Ubezroya. He has tefillin on his head and his arm. Bitzitzis bebigdai, and sitzis on his beged. Umezuzah bepischai. Muchzik hu shleiechta. He's muchzik that he won't do an avera. Shar yeshlei maskirim rabim. He has many things to remind him. Vehein heim ha-malachim shematzilim aisai. These are the malachim that protect him. Meilchatoi. Shenemar, the pasuk we just quoted. Choyne malach Hashem saviv l'reiav vayichalseim. Baruch, what's the lashon that's cut off? Baruch Rachmana Desaya, blessed is the one that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps him. Beautiful lashon of the Rambam, the last Perek Vav, Halacha Yitzayin. So again, a person of course has Bechira, nothing can go ahead and stop you from doing an Aveira, but it's the knowledge that we have all these things to protect us. We have the Tefillin and the Mezuzah and Mezuzah and Tefillin and Tzitzis. All these things are there to go ahead and remind us. And again, we do them all the time and every day, but we don't stop and think for a second. I think it's a very, very, very wichtig thing. If we give it the right thought, it's a very. I spoke out in Parshas Bo, that famous Ramban guys, that you go ahead, and I say you put your hands on a mezuzah and remember the three things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's going on in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of Ashgacha Pratis every single second in the world. It's a different mezuzah rather than the perfunctory, giving a kiss, walking in. Just give it a thought for a second. Tefillin every single day you put it on since you're by mitzvah. Baruch Hashem, you're zeicher to it. Every day you should go ahead at least maybe once a week. Think about, wow, I'm zeicher to this. It's an unbelievable thing. You put your tzitzis on in the morning. You put at least your talis gadol when you put on in the morning. Try that for a second. It's hard to do every single day because you do it, but give it a single thought and think of the meaning behind it. And I think all of our Yiddishkeit we can practice and be a little better. Thank you for listening.